Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin. Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, a serial tech entrepreneur who's launched 30 companies, failed at 20 of those, but scaled 10 of those to success. And that roller coaster of a ride, I talk about that in my book called Fail Hard, Win Big. And this is where I teach you how to turn failure into your biggest competitive advantage and how custom software played a defining role in every win. Now I'm the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We're a US-based software engineering company with resources in both Latin America and the US. We help existing engineering teams scale. And today I am joined by Ryan Debenham, CEO of Grin. Ryan has a fun career journey. He started as a software engineer, moved up the ranks to CTO and CPTO and then CEO. This is going to be a fun one. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Good to be here.
You bet. Ryan, if you would, walk our listeners through the journey of your career. And, as far as I'm concerned, most software engineers would love to be able to grow to be the CEO of a company. So we're excited to hear.
Yeah. I would love to dive into the conversation. It's interesting because as I would describe that arc, I would describe it as engineer and then progressing in, and then thinking like the path here is management. And so team lead, manager, director, CTO, CPTO, CEO. But the interesting part of that arc is I find myself now back to being an engineer as a CEO, which, I've had different advice throughout my career, but some of the most valuable advice I've had in my career is don't get out of the details. And if you have that core competency, keep it, stay with it, stay current, stay active. So anyways, I would say I'm an engineer. I am a software engineer. I am also a CEO. I have to remind my team of that often and say, yes, I am a CEO, but I'm also a software engineer. And don't be intimidated by that CEO title because we need to get past that and we need to work as a team and we need to figure out the best way to get things done. Regardless, I love writing code. It is absolutely fascinating to me. I love building product and there's nothing more that I'm more passionate about than honestly getting into the flow. I call it as like Ryan's going into the black hole where I just can zoom into something and create something really interesting. And today, I actually just got off a call with a board member explaining that it is the most unbelievable time that I have ever experienced where we have this new building block of technology that is LLMs and these new kind of foundational models that we have to use. And the products and software that we're able to create today is just mind-blowing. I describe it as I'm building software that is alive. And I truly do believe that. And it's the most wildest experience I've ever imagined. So anyways, I progressed through the ranks of various leadership. I love management. It's very difficult. It's very rewarding. And I've had an evolved opinion of what it means to manage people, what it means to be a leader, what it means to build great products. So happy to dive into those conversations. Being a CEO was kind of the final evolution where I really opened up my mind to what companies need from engineering. And I've never actually really felt that I understood go-to-market or a business in its entirety until I was responsible for the sales number and the revenue of a business. And suddenly the connection was made that, oh, hey, we can actually build better software. We can do things different now that I truly feel that I have this connection to what is the business's ultimate objective. So that'd be an interesting topic as well, but we'll take it the direction that you'd like to.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. Love your passion. Now tell us about your company, Grin.
Yes. Grin is a pioneer in the influencer marketing category. Our original founder and one of the two founders was at Red Bull, and Red Bull is an incredible marketing success. And, back in the day, if you've heard the story, and you may have seen that the Red Bull cars driving around and they're handing Red Bulls out at the beach and at events. And they really created this groundswell word of mouth, marketing that became incredibly effective. And, they really tapped into influencers of that time, which was not really your Instagram and TikTok influencers was your local surf experts, or
Uh-huh.
the sponsored athletes in in various different categories, and they were able to leverage that to grow very organically and very effectively. So Brandon leaves Red Bull and realized, and he was particularly in the area of helping build these like teams of ambassadors and working with athletes and all of that. So he leaves and recognizes there's an opportunity to tap into what Red Bull did and create a business that is able to help other people do something similar. And, this is in like 2014, 2015, and they kind of played around with some different ideas. Around 2017 or 2018, they found the opportunity that made sense, which was, and this is basically as Instagram, TikTok, influencers, Facebook, etc. Having these digital audiences and brands trying to leverage that to market and achieve word of mouth, what was starting to happen. And so they saw that opportunity, they took advantage of it, and they built software to help brands do that. And so essentially, we'll help you find these influencers. We will help you contract with them and communicate with them. We will help you manage their tasks and their activity and their payments, and basically just the operational process of working with an influencer. Grin was built to support brands that were doing that at a larger scale, and really was very successful up and through, I would say the latter part of 2022 happened. And this will lead into where is Grin going today. But what happened is Grin kind of broke through that initial customer base, which they already had the conviction that influencers would work. They already had experience working with them. And so Grin was like a lifesaver to these, marketing experts, because we were able to save them so much time by having a better system of record. The problem came when Grin started to approach more of the aspirational customer. Hey, we want to do influencer marketing. And you kind of broke through the early adopters and getting more into the mainstream of brands that wanted to do influencer marketing. And the problem is Grin, as well as other players in the space, were not built to help brands do it effectively, just manage it.
Okay.
And the problem is a lot of these brands just didn't know how to do it effectively. And it's very difficult. It's heavily operational. There's a lack of expertise in the industry, and there's just a lack of standardization. And so a lot of the brands would buy Grin thinking this is how you do it, and then they would not have success over the course of the year. And then they would just say, this isn't working for us. Let's try a different channel. And so we recognize that over like 2023 and 2024 that we were unable to continue with the growth that we wanted to as a company, because we weren't able to get enough of our customers to have the success that they needed to. And we just weren't providing enough as a platform to really help people have a high likelihood of success if they invested in Grin. And so we've recently taken on the initiative to build really a product from the ground up using AI as a primary building block and approaching it very different. I'm happy to answer more questions as it relates to that, but we do see that there is a massive opportunity to support, influence, and drive, more of this organic word of mouth at scale very effectively for every brand in the world. But it has to be done in a different way. It has to, and we believe AI is the unlock.
Gotcha.
So anyways, that's who we are. That's what we're about. And yeah.
I love it. Thank you for that overview. Now, you've been there a couple of years now, and you were a CTO at a previous company, and you originally came into Grin as CPTO, correct?
Correct.
Now, how did you land that position? And I always like to ask people that, because being a CIO, a CTO, it's a pretty volatile space. You're blamed for everything good and bad. I always like guests to share how they landed their current roles.
So I'll give you the quick arc. I was a software team manager at a company called backcountry.com. I was managing 15, 16 software engineers. And I had the opportunity to join a startup. And I initially resisted the idea. The startup said, we don't have managers, so you just have to join us as an engineer. And that, I was worried about that. Like, this feels like a step backwards in my career. I've made it into management. I'm like working my way up the chain, and stepping back in my career feels like the wrong move. the reason I took the bet is because in fact, the guy who I worked for at this company, Backcountry, was now the VP of engineering at this startup called Qualtrics. And he asked me a couple questions. He said, one, Ryan, you should ask yourself a couple questions. Do you think Qualtrics is going to succeed? And so as you do your due diligence, look at who the founders are, look at who the investors are, look at what the company vision is, look at me and your trust in me. Do you think the company will succeed? And then two, do you think that if you were here at this company that you would succeed? And, think about what the needs are from you and the environment that you'll be in and, the interest that you have in what you're going to be asked to do and think about whether or not you would succeed. And then the other piece of advice he gave me was, he said, I encourage you as you navigate your career to focus less on the title and the compensation and focus more on being in an environment where you are learning the things that you are motivated and interested to learn. And he said, if you do that, then you will learn more in your career. And by learning more, you will ultimately have the best opportunities. And so that was like,
Fast forward, how did that get you to land your position at Grin?
so I took the opportunity. Qualtrics had phenomenal success. It was a Series A when I joined. It sold for $8 billion 5 years later. I left the company as a director of software engineering and landed my first executive role as a CTO at Route. The way I landed that role was Qualtrics was the biggest success story that Utah, where I'm from, had ever had. Leaving there as a director, I was managing a large team. I had experience in not only how to build software at scale, but also how the company was able to achieve a lot of their success. And so a brand new startup like Route, which was a 15-person company, was like, we'll give you the job of CTO. Like, you've had a phenomenal success. Come help us do something similar. And so I took the job as CTO at Route. At Route, over the next 4 years, we had a lot of success. We rode the wave of e-commerce, which boomed in 2020, 2021. We grew the company to 100 million in revenue in 4 years, which at the time was not very many companies had accomplished that. We got to a point where we were on the downside of e-commerce. If e-commerce went through a nice little wave, and we took advantage of a lot of cash during that time. Cash was very cheap to get, and we were in a situation where honestly we overspent, like a lot of tech companies were. We had about 500 people. Growth slowed down. We were not able to sustain it, and Route had to scale back. And at that point in time for me, I had about 200 people on the product and engineering team at Route. And I knew that, and a lot of the leadership that I had developed and kind of helped coach were very capable people. And we ended up scaling down quite a bit. So I knew either I had to let those people go or I had to go and let one of them step up. And I chose the latter. I said, look, this is a great opportunity for one of my leaders to step up, and I can go find something new. So I left the company in 2023. The way I landed the role at Grin was I knew Grin's CRO was Charlie Biesecker. Charlie had been at Grin. Charlie had also been at Qualtrics with me. So I would encourage people to build and nurture those relationships, because I think that they are an important point, an important part of finding opportunities and landing good jobs. I had a strong referral from Charlie. I met the founders of Grin and explained to them my story and my progress. And I actually have an affinity for the influencer industry, because before I even ever started my career as a software engineer, I was a professional snowboarder. So, being in Utah, I
Very
lived right next
cool.
to the mountains, and I was an influencer of that time, in the early 2000s. And it wasn't through Instagram or, a social platform. It was local events and meetups and contests and things of the like. So I really cared about the influencer industry. I believe in it. I believe that influence is incredibly powerful, and getting the opportunity to help figure out how do we tap into influence as a form of marketing that I believe is more authentic than paid media was a very exciting opportunity. I took,
So
yep,
you utilized your network. You knew one of the executives there. You didn't apply online
nope.
and cross your fingers.
Nope. It was, hey, Ryan, we need a new CTO. And I said, okay, I'd be interested to talk. And then the next thing I knew, I was flying to Sacramento to meet Brandon and Brian. So
Well, and then obviously, as you got in, you had a huge impact to be able to then work your way up to seat.
yes. And, what I would encourage people a couple things. One, as a builder, I'm an idea person. I'm a high energy person. I'm also, you mentioned right at the very beginning, and it immediately resonated. I am somebody who loves to introspect and grow and learn through those tough moments. And so I take feedback very well. I react to feedback very proactively. And so anyways, when I joined running product and engineering, it was within really probably just a handful of months when Brandon approached me, our CEO at the time and co-founder, and said, I think it's important that we restructure the company. And, he mentioned, I've been at this for a long time. I don't know that I have the energy to lead that restructuring. He's like, I think that we need somebody technical at the top. He's like, this is a particularly technical problem. And he's like, I think that you think about the problems in the right way as a product leader. And so he offered me the role of president first. And he said, why don't you take the role of president? You can run the company. Essentially, I report to Brandon, everybody else reports to me. And, my feedback at the time was, I've never run go to market. I've never run sales, finance, marketing, any of these functions before. And thankfully, Brandon, starting with Brandon, but ultimately the board said, that's okay, go learn.
Very
And
nice. That's a unique opportunity.
I saw it as a unique opportunity. I'm grateful for it. I'll admit, like, I did not fully understand how to run those functions when I stepped into it. I had worked next to them for many, many years, but being responsible for them was a whole new eye-opening experience, of which I would say there were absolutely some missteps on my part right to begin with. Like, just things I didn't know, things I should have tried, things that I could have recognized sooner that would have been good or bad decisions to make. Just a lot of things that you learn.
Well, and let's touch on those here in a bit. Let's dive into your engineering team. How many engineers do you have? How are you structured? Give some detail there if you would.
Yeah, today we're small. We are about 8 software engineers. We're a company of 25, and Grin at one point was a company of 500. So what's interesting is, and this would be, this is probably one of those like polarizing topics. I met with a founder recently at a point where we had about 100 people, and his point was, hey, do you see 100 people as an advantage or a disadvantage? And that was an interesting, question. And I a couple of days later, I met with the engineering leader over at Qualtrics, who has a team of about 1,500. And I posed the same question. I said, do you see your team of 1,500 as an advantage or a disadvantage? And again, you kind of stop and you think about that for a minute. And the reality is, call it even just 5 years ago, a business that's doing $150,000 to $200,000 in revenue per year per employee is kind of meeting expectations. Fast forward to today, and those expectations are changing very quickly. And I've set an internal goal with my company that we won't hire until we are achieving at least $1 million in revenue per employee. And at that point, we would consider hiring. But I believe that we can stretch that number quite a bit higher. The reason, so we're 8 engineers, we're a team of 25 total. And the reason why I find that so captivating and so exciting right now is, one, there are, depending on which function you're referring to, but especially in software engineering, there is the opportunity to leverage AI to become significantly more efficient. That is absolutely true. As an engineer that has used Claude, Cursor, you name it, you can't just let the AI run by itself.
Right.
It will shoot itself in the foot all over the place. But a good engineer can guide an AI to be significantly more effective than you could without it. And so I do believe a team of 6 can operate like a team of 60.
Now, are you guys in office, remote, hybrid?
We're remote. Yep. So I've got 3 or 4. You mentioned that you've got folks in Latin America and other. I've got a team in Brazil. I've at Route, I actually ended up hiring an engineering leader that had come from Brazil, who is now a US citizen, but still has family in Brazil. We ended up hiring engineers in Brazil, spending time in Brazil. So I love Rio, Sao Paulo, the areas down there. The engineers are phenomenal. I also have engineers in Costa Rica, which when I was at Backcountry, we had engineers in Costa Rica that I've maintained those relationships, and some of them still work for me today. So we've got a team in Latin America. We also have an engineer in Canada. We've got a few up here stateside. So we're kind of all over the place. And then a lot of the team outside of engineering is spread throughout the US mostly.
Now, I'm a CEO who is not an engineer. I am a CEO who's built a bunch of companies. We've always been a custom software enabled company. And I know the whole reason I started Sonatify Technology almost 6 years ago was that same time zone aspect of working with engineers to me was everything. It became harder and harder to have the collaboration you need with software engineers when you're dealing with people offshore and you may only have an hour or two overlap. That was really the driving point of why I even started my company in the first place. And it sounds like you're a big believer in that same time collaboration as well.
Oh yeah. In fact, when I was at Qualtrics, I had a team in Krakow, which was, which we ended up getting more than a few hours of overlap, but that's because the team in Krakow would work till like 10 or 11 p.m. at night, which, really kind of sucked for them. So the amazing thing about working in a similar time zone is obviously most of the day we're overlapping. And the reality is you go just about everywhere you find people that speak incredible English. And so, it doesn't feel like my team is in Brazil or it's like, no, they're my team. We all like work majority of the same hours per day. And it's a big benefit to be able to hire wherever it makes the most sense.
So your company's gone through quite a transformation and restructuring from 500 people to 25. So that's definitely many times what works during a period. You have to evolve and change. So it sounds like you guys have been in a big restructuring period.
Yeah. And, the unfortunate part in terms of the employee experience was that it was numerous restructuring. And, that
which is never easy, but if you want to survive, that's often what you have to do.
And you kind of think back about that, and it's like, maybe we should have just gone deeper the first time, and then we would have only had to do it once. And there's a lot of like we shoulda, coulda, woulda, but the reality is that you don't have that information at the time. The worst thing as an executive or a manager of a team is to affect people's lives. It is the absolute worst thing to fire somebody, to lay off people. It is the reason why management sucks is that you are ultimately responsible to make decisions like that. And they're hard. And, you get called all sorts of names from like, an engineer should never be a CEO to, you don't care about people to like, people will come up with all sorts of reasons to hate you for having to make that decision. And you have to absorb that. And that's heavy. It's really heavy.
No doubt. I have never enjoyed letting people go, whether they deserved it or not. It's still not fun, the impact you have on people's life. But unfortunately, it's part of business.
It's part of business.
Ryan, as a tech CEO here in Q4 2025, what's the biggest challenge you're facing now?
We're building a new product, and we are having to find new product market fit, and that's really hard. We maintain our existing, we call it our classic product, and there continues to be a lot of interest for our classic product. We have essentially disbanded the sales team and the go-to-market effort around it, but we have a lot of like demand knocking on the door, which is great. So that there continues to be demand for this classic product, and we are servicing that demand and figuring out how to do it really efficiently. But we are in the mode of building something new. And what's so challenging about that is we are at a point in time where there's very little best practice or standards or understanding for how to really build agentic software. And there's a lot of hype in the AI industry. There's a lot of people that say a lot of things. But underneath all of that, there is incredible value to be created. You think of it similarly to when the internet became something that companies started to adopt, and you had this spike of like activity and hype in the late 90s and early 2000s. And a lot of the, then you had this burst where a lot of companies failed. And I believe that will happen again, because I think that there is a lot of hype right now. And because there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of dollars flowing into it. And I think because there's a lack of understanding of how to best build this kind of software, I think a lot of the products built right now will fail. I do believe that. But I also believe that if you look back in the early 2000s, some of the biggest, most iconic companies of the current decade or multiple decades were built at that time. And I think that you will see that happen now too. You will see some of the most significant companies of the future built right now, and they will figure out how to use this technology in the way that creates tremendous value, and it will emerge over the next couple of years. 5-10 years from now, everybody will be building software this way. It'll emerge as a standard, a best practice. The patterns will exist. It's just how software will be built. But today it feels like
It's changing every day.
we're charting, it's uncharted territory. We're actively learning and exploring as we go.
I definitely agree. And a lot of times people like to hype AI to be a lot more than what it is. Now it's phenomenal. And I'll make the comment from a software engineering perspective, we've seen it be phenomenal for helping productivity. We've seen it phenomenal for things like unit testing, documentation. And we're starting to see the potential for the shift of the developer role and that AI can bring. Now, with that said, there's a reason why every major research company and organization, such as MIT, are saying 95% of generative AI projects are failing.
Mhm.
Because everybody's trying to figure it out and how to
Yes.
take it more than that. And every time, I know we see a lot of you get 90% there on an AI initiative and you have no idea how to do the last 10%.
Yeah.
But agree, disagree? What's your take on that?
100% agree. I think there are a handful of mature use cases today for AI, and then I think the rest is being invented. Chat is a mature use case for AI today. And so you have
No doubt.
products like Chat GPT and Gemini and others that are now emerging on standards, and they have found great product market fit, with a product that people absolutely love, that they're evolving memory systems and all sorts of things now that where chat as an AI feature is a product that's going to stick around. I would
Yep.
say coding is another one, right? Coding is a maturing use case where you are now getting mass adoption by engineers. People are learning how to use it. It is making them more efficient. The tooling is getting better. And I believe that coding with AI agents is here to stay, and it's going to get a lot better. But you kind of go outside of a handful of maturing use cases, and there is a lot of just open area for innovation and disruption, but it's yet to be realized.
Well, what would be some of the other areas from your vantage point? So I like how you phrase that. From an AI perspective, chat is very mature. It's very useful. It's definitely the engineering coding world learning how to integrate it for efficiencies. But what are some areas that are not up to par that you think there's a lot of hype around?
Honestly, I think you could go outside of that, and just about everywhere. I think that you see some maturing use cases, but a lot of lack of it. Marketing, there's very little to support marketers. And we are investing in AI to support marketers, but the only AI I see in marketing right now, I would say, is largely hype. It's like a bolted on chat feature, or something that is less substance than it is like demoware. Um,
And I agree wholeheartedly. Keep going. I want to pick your brain on this. This is great stuff.
I think you kind of emerge into like customer support and like front desk sort of reception, AI reception, and it's getting better. My wife actually runs a med spa, and she is using AI to answer the phone in some cases, and in others, and it is becoming more valuable.
Yeah, it's still got a ways to go, though. It
It's
can route you to the
yes,
right direction. It,
it has a
I
way.
know I still want to choke most of them that I
Yes,
call.
exactly. And so What I expect to happen over the next handful of years is, and to me, it's not surprising that coding is a use case that matured quicker than many others, because engineers need to build these products and they build first for themselves. So an engineer says, this would be really useful. And naturally, you see products to support engineers get built by engineers. Now, engineers need to bring that same level of value to other industries. Engineers, they understand that they know what to build for themselves. They are engineers. Like, it's harder for an engineer to build for a marketer, because an engineer is not a marketer, and an engineer doesn't intuit the same way that they would for an engineering tool what a marketer would need. And so I think as you get into these other categories, it takes time to bring these innovations, to bring engineers and builders up to speed to create something of that level of value to support these other professionals and roles. But it's going to happen very soon. We are building it for marketing. I've described it to my team. It's the most fascinating experience I've ever had, where I feel like I'm building a product that is alive. And I actually...
Well, hurry up with that, would you? Because, I know we could use it. And I would agree that's an area that there's a lot of hype, but not a lot of great stuff outside of some bolt-ons here and there.
There's not much substance in it. And it's a really unique experience to think about, how do I create an emotional response with my user? How do I make them develop feelings for this agent that they're interacting with, like a level of psychology and human understanding and awareness that has to go into the way we design and build products. It's just wild. But what's really fascinating to see is if you create an environment where an agent can evolve. It's and there's no way we could go out and code the product that we want to build. It would be impossible. Just like you couldn't code ChatGPT. ChatGPT had to learn. Like, I actually was working to build text analytics systems in 2014 using Bag of Words and various ways of doing sentiment analysis and topic analysis, and we were nowhere near. It's just a completely different universe of technology, where we had to apply rules and and try to understand sarcasm. And it was impossible to create anything that really checked the box that this technology can understand human written text. And the realization there is, you can't code it. You have to try to teach it. And LLMs have learned with large language training how to learn language, and it has to be applied. You can't teach software to run a marketing team. You can't teach software to help somebody be more effective in their marketing strategy, but AI can learn it. And so if you create an environment where AI can evolve, then you finally create an opportunity for AI to properly solve this problem.
Well put. And Ryan, I apologize. We're out of time. Thank you so much for getting uncensored with us today. I love your story, your journey from engineer to rising the ranks, playing CTO, CPTO, president, and CEO. You're a great inspiration for others in the engineering field who want to take a similar path. Before we wrap, what's some no BS advice you have for today's tech leaders trying to build, scale, or even just survive?
Learn AI. It will change everything. Use AI tools, understand their strengths and their weaknesses, understand what makes them work, build agents. Go try ChatGPT's new agent builder. Go build agents in NAN. Learn how this new building block can be applied to create new products. The rest will take care of itself. We are at a revolutionary point in time.
Awesome. Great advice, Ryan. Thank you so much. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you enjoyed the show, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, well, we'll just go ahead and share it with your competitors. Might be the edge they're looking for. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters. See you next time.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, We deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.